Well, hello everybody. The Gary Neville podcast is back, starring Gary Neville. It's a beautiful sunny evening at Old Trafford. Manchester United beaten, though, Gary, 1-0 by Arsenal. On a day, despite that scoreline, I presume you agree, not without its positives for United.
Yeah, I actually thought that they played well. I thought they were the better team in the game in terms of performance. But we know that performance sometimes, obviously, isn't enough. And that Arsenal have got real resilience and they can sort of hang in there and sort of grind out, 1-0 victories, and that was really good from Arsenal. But I just thought there were some positives. I thought Cunha and Mbeumo, I think probably Mbeumo more in the first half, Cunha more in the second half, but I think they showed that they can sort of handle sort of a big game at Old Trafford. They showed they've got the quality and the ability. I thought Cunha looks a really good player. We obviously know that from Wolves, but you can see it's interesting. I actually thought that when Mount was on the pitch, they actually looked a little bit better up front in terms of connecting it. Now, obviously, Seshko had to come on and he was only on for 20 minutes and to try and sort of get that goal. But I actually thought when Mount and particularly Cunha on that side of the pitch, they looked like they did combine well with each other. I actually thought United found it more difficult the more subs they made. But I thought there were some positives for United. Obviously, there's a long way to go. This is a tough start. Arsenal, potential champions this season. It's only going to be Arsenal, Liverpool or City. So we know that Arsenal are a tough team to beat, tough team to break down. The goalkeeper's very good. The back four outstanding. They had two full-backs that came on that would probably get in 99% of teams in this league. So yeah, I wasn't not too downhearted. It's the first game of the season. I thought the system worked better. I actually thought the back three did very well of Shaw, De Ligt and Yoro. I thought that Manchester United defended really well. I actually thought Casemiro and Fernandes played well in midfield, and I thought that was going to be a difficult game for those two against Zubimendi, Rice and Ødegaard. I thought they could get outnumbered, but they didn't. Casemiro and Fernandes, I thought, held their own. So, I think United over the course of that match, in terms of the football that they played and their performance, were probably the better team. But we know, obviously, they've lost the game, and that's what matters.
And presumably, if Manchester United played well and lost, then there must be some good things to say about Arsenal too.
Yeah, I think that I said a couple of weeks ago, Arsenal have got to pretend that the very first game of this season is February, and that was a February-March type performance. Go away from home, win at Old Trafford 1-0. That's a big result. Now, it's happened very early in the season, but it'll give them real confidence. They'll travel back to London tonight and they'll feel, together. They didn't play well, Arsenal. I mean, their football, really, for the players that they have out on that pitch, in terms of Rice, Zubimendi, Ødegaard, Saka, Martinelli, Gyökeres, they really did let themselves down at times, particularly, I think, on the counter-attack. They were really sloppy. Didn't really get their passing going. I thought they actually started the game quite jittery. I thought the two centre-backs who actually grew in the game and are outstanding, they're a brilliant pair, but I thought Saliba had one of the shakiest 10 minutes that I've seen from him in that first period of the game. So, yeah, I think for them to get a clean sheet here, to get a win at Old Trafford and not be at their best, which they were well off their best, and they'll certainly get better than that, I thought was a real plus. But just little things, that front three, very early on, Martinelli, Saka, Gyökeres, they've got to be better than that. I thought United's front three of Mount, Cunha and Mbeumo, that's the first time they played together in a Premier League game. I thought they were a lot better in terms of their combinations and play than Arsenal's front three. I thought United's front three were better. So that's something to work on. Obviously, it's very early. I thought Gyökeres actually looked a handful. I thought he did some good things. I was actually surprised he came off. I thought Arsenal actually, they didn't change defensively when the substitutes were made, but they lost their attacking threat completely, I felt, when Gyökeres went off. So, yeah, things to work on. But the big thing for Mikel Arteta, he's got a very resilient bunch. They're good at set pieces. They're a good defensive unit. They're just going to have to have a little bit more sparkle up front. But that's Old Trafford's a tough place to come, and it's the first game of the season. So, yeah, well done to Arsenal. I think it's a big victory for them.
And of the three clubs that you've just said can win the league, in your opinion, they have all won first up. So shall we go back and take them one by one? Liverpool, first up, Friday night. Fabulous football match, obviously stained by that horrible racist incident.
Yeah.
But in terms of first of all, the tributes to Diogo Jota, beautiful. And then the match itself, really thrilling. A really good launch night at Anfield. And what did you make of Liverpool?
Yeah, the game was great. I think Semenyo, to be fair, not just in his performance, but actually his statements that he made yesterday, has just been the star of this weekend, without a shadow of a doubt. I thought it was incredible, his words that he put out on social media yesterday. Demonstrates what a man and what a character he is. And what he suffered there on Friday night is just absolutely unacceptable. And that's the first thing to say. But it was an outstanding game, marred by that incident. You know, the thrill of the game in terms of how Liverpool play, how Bournemouth then came back into it, and then Liverpool obviously scored the late goals. We had that debate at the end with Arne Slot, me and Jamie Carragher, because there's part of me loves that type of football, the leaving 2-on-2 at the back, the full-backs going forward, and even at 2-1 up, sort of over-committing. That's how we played out here for many, many years, and just it's that risk element of football. I think Liverpool are going to be a thrilling watch, and if they sign Isak, even more thrilling. And Ekitike had an outstanding Premier League debut. So, yeah, there was a lot of good out there on Friday night for us to watch amongst that sort of horrible incident. And it was a thrilling game. And, you know, credit to Liverpool for coming back towards the end. But they've got so much firepower. They can score goals. And they're going to win a lot of games, maybe 3-2, 4-2, 3-1. You know, I think Arne Slot and the Liverpool players will want to see them get more solid defensively. I think the fullbacks will need to settle down a little bit defensively. Kirkes was quite rash, and he'll just need to, it's understandable. It's his first game at Anfield. Frimpong, I thought he was actually doing quite well, but obviously, again, he got substituted. So, yeah, there are some questions, I think, for Liverpool in respect of their sort of defensive side of their game and their balance in midfield. Obviously, without Gravenberch, they look like they lack a bit of legs, and there's a lot of space in there, which is not something we were used to last season. But they've got some very, very good players, and they've got more players to come in, I think. So, yeah, a good start for them, but bits to work on, as you'd expect.
And perhaps, my opinion doesn't matter, but alongside Semenyo, who you rightly say is the star of the weekend, perhaps next in that list could be Tijani Reinders. I mean, he was a joy for City yesterday.
Yeah, we didn't know he was that good, did we? Actually, I was doing the podcast earlier on in the week, and Jill Scott had obviously watched quite a bit of City in pre-season, and she said Reinders really good, watch out for him. And obviously I've seen him play, but then you watched him yesterday. It's the first game. We shouldn't get carried away by anything that we've seen in this first weekend, because things will start to obviously even themselves out and things will start to settle down. But what an outstanding game he had. And when you just look at the profile of a player and you think he scores with his left foot, his pass is with his right foot, the one that's over the top for Rico Lewis. His running power, forward and back. And you start thinking, ooh, that looks one hell of a play. There are very few players that you can see score a goal like that with a left foot, a pass with the right foot. You know, the running power forward and sort of the ability to sort of drive into that space. No, it was a really, I was watching him last night in that game, and I thought if I was a City manager, fan, teammate, I'd be thinking, oh, hang on a minute. You know, people haven't written City off, let's be clear, they haven't, but they're asking questions as to whether this squad is as good as Arsenal or Liverpool, and rightly so, thinking always that they've got this manager who's a genius who doesn't not win Premier League titles or titles 2 years on the bounce. So you've always got that in the back of your mind. You've got the question mark over Rodri, so you're thinking, will Stones stay fit all season? Is Rodri going to be fit? Have they got that sort of ability up top to sparkle? But you've got Foden, Shirky, you've got obviously Bernardo Silva, Marmoush, Haaland. If you get Reinders and Rodri in there with Bernardo Silva, and you're thinking, hang on a minute, that's a hell of a team. Now, it's obviously they have to keep the defenders fit. But City, it's ridiculous to think of them as sort of, I'm almost like making them sound like dark horses. Manchester City, Pep Guardiola's team that's won a treble and won many championships in the last 5 years. But they just dropped off so quickly and so violently, really. It was like off the edge of a cliff. But Reinders, yesterday, and the way in which City performed, it's too early to say that they go right up there as champions. But if they keep Rodri fit, Reinders fit in midfield, and Haaland and Diaz and Stones, that spine is as good as anything you'll see in this league, and they'll be really, really tough to stop.
Yeah, it is interesting. I know I'm guilty of being reactionary and first weekend, and you think something, don't you? But as you rightly said, it's been really fascinating that in this sort of prediction season, Manchester City have been relatively little mentioned, and without, or try to avoid being guilty of reacting to the first weekend. Do you feel that in terms of your expectations, they have risen now? Are you considering them more seriously based on what you saw yesterday?
I think, look, between the three of them, Liverpool, Arsenal and City, and what we've seen in this first weekend, all of them have got, I think, cases for saying that they could win the league. And all equal cases. I don't think there's any of the three that you would look at and think they're above the other. I'm going to be asked to go on Monday Night Football tomorrow night and make a prediction of who I'm going to win the league, and I'm going to probably say Arsenal again because I've said them the last 3 seasons. But honestly, I think Liverpool, with Isak coming in, could easily win the league. If they settle those two full-backs down and they get Gravenberch back, they could easily win this league by 5, 6, 7 points. We could be staring the obvious in the face that Pep Guardiola signs Reinders, he gets Rodri, his kingpin back in midfield. They've got the best striker in the league in Haaland and probably one of the best strikers in the world that scores 40 goals. And all of a sudden you've got Stones and Diaz who could become the best centre-back pairing in the league all of a sudden if they're at the best. And you would say, you could be looking back in 6 months and saying, well, it was staring you in the face. They've got a treble-winning spine. They've got new players that look outstanding. They've got the best forward in the league in terms of scoring goals. So, and then you look at Arsenal and you think, the last two pieces of the jigsaw, they've got probably the best defensive unit. They look like they're a real team. They're difficult to beat. They're great on set pieces. Gyökeres obviously looks like he's a handful and a threat up front. Zubimendi in midfield. So all three have got genuine cases. I know that there won't be equal favourites. I know Liverpool will be slightly ahead. But I don't think if you ask Liverpool fans or if you ask City fans or asked Arsenal fans, I don't think any of them would sit here and say they were confident they would win the league this season. But I think they'd all think we've got a great chance of winning the league because the three of them are really close, I think.
I was interested that you did say it's just three. And sort of putting it into the context of this weekend, I'm just thinking of the other ones who might make an argument. Chelsea, of course, have started with a blank game against Palace. Villa and Newcastle blotted each other out. Spurs have had a good home win. That's a nice launch for Thomas Frank.
Yeah, I'm not being dismissive of the other teams in terms of saying that they're poor teams or nowhere near good enough. They just haven't got that. They haven't got that experience, that maturity, that title-winning feeling about them yet. Those teams that you've just mentioned, Aston Villa and Newcastle, are not going to win the league. I think you're specifically mainly referring to Chelsea. Maybe they've won the World Club Championship. They finished obviously in Champions League spaces last season. But when I look at Chelsea, they've got obviously a lot of very good young players. But you're not looking at João Pedro and Delap in the same light as you're looking at sort of Arsenal's front players or Liverpool's front players or City's. You're just not. They're good players and I think they'll have a good season, Chelsea. But no, I'm not looking at them and thinking that there is that sort of spine of a title-winning team there yet. It's not ready. It's not right. I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Bless me. So yeah, that's just not being, and that's not just because of today. I think we would have said exactly the same before this game. They've drawn against a very good team today in Crystal Palace. So for me, yeah, I think that top three are going to be fighting it out till probably, one of them may drop away a few weeks before the end, but I don't know which one it would be. But I think those three are going to be the ones that are going to be going for it.
Okay, let's just finish with probably, if you're a neutral looking down, what must have been the happiest place in England yesterday would be Sunderland.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what a sensational start.
Yeah.
And you know, of course, and I do too, having watched football there, it is a great place when it's bouncing.
Yeah.
And seeing the pictures of it yesterday, it was bouncing.
Yeah, I mean, what a day. What a day. And you saw those faces in the crowd when the goals were going in, and it's an amazing sort of situation when you see clubs come up. You referred to, obviously, a game earlier today about Brentford against, I think, Arsenal a few seasons ago, and it was magnificent that night. And, you wish you'd have been at Sunderland yesterday, just experiencing, they've missed out for so many years, such a great football club. But the more importantly, I think obviously we've talked a lot about, and I'm worried about it actually, about the three from the Championship coming up and then going straight back down. I am worried about that situation. But actually, when I saw Sunderland yesterday, there was a lot of things that I liked. The physicality in the air with the headed goals. I think the fact that they had players that looked like they were really sort of powerful and strong, could make runs in behind, they were really direct. And I think we've seen some teams come up from the Championship and they've tried to play these 1,000 passes from the back, and I lose the will to live. I'm sorry. You're taking on Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, Villa, Arsenal, Liverpool, all these great sides, and you're passing out from the back and you've got Championship centre-halves. And I know you've done it in the Championship maybe, and it looks great. And I know there's reasons why teams do that now. One is because the coach wants to play the way in which we'll get that coach promoted. I think managers, owners want to play a progressive style of football. I think they also want to produce players that can be bought by the top clubs so that they create a player trading model that means that they can sell those players into clubs like City, Liverpool, Chelsea at 30, 40 million, and it keeps them propped up. But whatever happened to doing what you need to do to win football matches and points to be able to stay in the league? And actually, what I've enjoyed about this first weekend is that I don't want to see formulaic football. I don't want to see everybody playing the same way. I want to see direct, imperfect football. I do. Imperfection for me is beautiful in football. When players look directly run at players, and there's that element of, we've seen sometimes over the last few years wide players get the ball and pass it back and recycle it far too often. Now that can work, and sometimes if you haven't got, you've got 3 or 4 players in front of you, you think, okay, let's switch it, let's get it out the other side and see whether we can, push it into a different area of the pitch to get a sort of advantage. But I want to see wide players with thrill and risk, and players running forward and committing and over-committing in the box. That's why I wasn't overly critical of Liverpool the other night when they had that counter-attack goal against them. They had 7 players in the box. They could have gone 3-1 up and won the game in that moment. Obviously, they risked losing the game in doing it, but that's what I want to see. So for me, Sunderland yesterday demonstrated a lot of the qualities that I think can keep you in this league, because if you're playing for Liverpool, City and Arsenal, the 3 best teams in the league, and Sunderland come and try and play football against you and pass it around the pitch, you're really happy, because I've been there. I'm really happy if they try and take us on at football, because I know we're going to win that game. But if they try and basically be direct against us, beat us up, be aggressive, running behind us, be a threat. Some of the toughest games I had in Premier League football were not in the biggest matches. It was at grounds like Stoke, Wimbledon, Crystal Palace, West Brom, and there's many others, Southampton at the Dell, when I got beat there 5-3 or 5-2 one year or whatever it was, 6-3 one year, 3-1 the next, because you had players that basically had quality, but they also were really a massive physical threat. So set pieces were a real pressure in certain grounds. You played Wimbledon away, you're thinking, stick your helmets on type stuff. So I want to see this league not be 20 teams all trying to play beautiful football. And I thought Sunderland epitomised that yesterday in terms of spirit, energy, direct play, crosses and great headers from goals. I was really happy with it. I mean, we've not talked about the set piece that's won this game here today. And obviously I think that, I actually thought Bayandira, I mean, you can never say a goalkeeper's had a good game when they've made a mistake like that, because I think any defender that gives a goal away, you've given up your credit of having a good game. I've never bought into this idea that a goalkeeper gives a goal away and then they make a save 10 minutes later and they say he's made up for it. He never thinks that. A professional never thinks that. If I make a mistake in a game and we win 2-1, I don't think, I've got away. I just feel I'm very lucky and fortunate that I'm playing with good players and I've got to sort myself out, because it'll cost us points if I carry on doing it. But what it does point towards is Arsenal's great set-piece play, the way in which they work set-pieces, but it also points towards a glaring issue for United that can't be ignored, and that is that they do need to find a goalkeeper. They have to. I'm absolutely unequivocal on that, because I had a bit of experience at United for 20 years where there were 2 big periods of 7 or 8 years with Schmeichel and Van der Sar, and then in between we had 7 or 8 goalkeepers in a sort of 6, 7, 8 year period. And it's really unsettling when you haven't got a dominant number 1 who's 6'2", who's dominant in the air, who owns his 6-yard box, who comes and punches everything, who makes a lot of saves and one-on-one and saves your points when your defenders make mistakes. I think that's going to need to be something. I don't know where they are on PSR. They seem to have a bit more money. They might have to sort of magic up a bit more money in the next week or 2, or do something on loan.
Donnarumma?
Look, the 2 that you look at that are that were mentioned in the last few weeks is Martinez and Donnarumma, and the reason I say that those two would be good goalkeepers for Manchester United is not necessarily because I think they're the best goalkeepers in Europe or that they're amazing. I think they've got big personalities and characters. You've seen Donnarumma in a European final for Italy save those penalties. He looked like a giant. You've seen him play for PSG in huge games under pressure. You've seen Martinez play in World Cup finals and win a World Cup. So they've played under extreme pressure, and they've got big personalities and characters, and they almost walk out with that arrogance and sort of dominance of a goalkeeper. And I think Manchester United, they need that. There's a number of things that Manchester United need this season. They need Luke Shaw to stay fit. I hope he didn't go off at the end because he was injured, because that would just be completely and utterly demoralising. Because when you saw actually that Yoro went to left centre-back, De Ligt went to right centre-back, and Maguire went in the middle, just through that one change of Luke Shaw, they didn't look as comfortable all of a sudden. On the ball, they didn't look as comfortable. But when Shaw was left side centre-back, De Ligt was in the middle and Yoro was right centre-back, I thought they looked really good as a back 3. And I think if Martinez was on the left, that would be equally as good. But if Luke Shaw can stay fit, and they can have that other, Maguire or De Ligt and Yoro, they're going to have a good back 3, Manchester United. They're going to keep quite, decent clean sheets out of it. But you've got to get the goalkeeper sorted. I thought Dorgu looked quite good at left wing-back. Diallo and Dallo, I think, are okay on the right as well. So I think Amorim's getting to that point whereby I think he's got a team that he thinks he can probably I think they need to sort the goalkeeper out, because they will continually concede goals and points, and it undermines what you're doing. I've said here that 75,000 or 72,000 home fans, when the goalkeeper's flapping at it, all they do is go, and that sends a shiver through defenders, the Manchester United defenders, it'll send a shiver through the goalkeeper. It creates an anxiety in the stadium. I've said it for many, many years. You've got to have personality, character and stability in that position. I think Manchester United are going to have to deal with it in this next couple of weeks. But I thought it was actually a good performance from United. I thought it was really resilient and good from Arsenal. And we've had a really good first weekend. I'm looking forward to Leeds and Everton tomorrow night, because I think that's got the makings of a really good game. But I think there's been some really good things this opening weekend.
Yeah, and I'm reading that Leeds are a big team too, by the way. Like
we're a big team,
or are going to be. No, careful, Gary. No, big physically. So if you liked that kind of get up and go football, then maybe that's what you're going to see. I don't know.
I've seen a few teams come up over the last few years. I'm not going to name names. They all do it their own way. But honestly, I just said it before. Please don't put us through it. This 5-yard pass into your goalkeeper, physicality, set pieces, strength, be dominant defensively, try and keep clean sheets, be a threat when you put the ball in the box and get bodies into the box. Leeds will be a threat physically, and I think they'll go about it the right way. You said they're a big team. Leeds are an enormous club.
Enormous club. Obviously, I was talking about the physicality of the players.
And they're enormous team as well, but they're enormous club, Leeds. And you just think of Leeds and Sunderland, and you think of those two grounds, and when those two grounds are at it and they're on top note, they're a real difficult place to go. But it's really bloody hard to get an atmosphere if your centre-halves are passing it to each other 5 yards across the box. But if you're getting it forward and you're into your strikers and you're winning free kicks and you're getting corners and there's throw-ins going into the box, Arsenal are unapologetic around long throws. So if you're Sunderland or Leeds, chuck it into the near post. Things can happen. And that's what Stoke used to do. It's what Crystal Palace used to do. It's what Wimbledon used to do. They haven't got £300-400 million player budgets, these teams. So why would you try and compete with the same level of football? Of course, if you can get it down and play with a bit of quality in certain moments, of course that's right. But I'm not advocating going back to 4-4-2 and long ball here, but I just think these teams that are coming up, they've got to be a bit more pragmatic, I think. And let's see what Leeds do tomorrow night against Everton. It should be a good game.